Yeah. And we're live. We're live. Everything's fine. We'll make him happy. Hi everyone. It's iBookBinding's live stream, and I'm still not sure if Mark's audio came through because I'm not sure if I checked the settings at the last moment. So yeah, they didn't work. Just a moment, and once again, no. Yeah, no, it's
You read a poem.
Finally,
Mark,
yeah.
you read a poem for us.
So nobody heard what you said in the beginning, Mark. Anyway,
that's just as well, because that would be liable and all sorts of stuff, I think.
Yeah. We have it recorded just in case.
I'm being very careful now. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, hello everybody. This is iBookBinding's live stream, and we come with a new season of our Booker Bindings special live streams. We started with podcasts and podcast episodes, and now with live streams because we can't be bothered, Anyway, Richard Minsky is over there on Facebook already, and he says, "Hi, Rich. Hi. Good morning." Hi, Richard is saying that's Pavel. Yeah, I'm losing it today. Anyway, so today, we have Mark Cockram, and we're going to talk about his Booker binding that he made. How much time did it take for you to make it this year?
Well, basically, I think we were given 6 weeks, but when you take into account, life, other work commitments and everything, that 6 weeks is very quickly down to days, basically. I think I had about 3 weeks bench time, which I know sounds a very long time, but it really isn't, because you can't fudge it. You can't sort of just say, "Oh, that'll do," because you're actually with the author or with the group, and you're sitting next to them and you're introduced to them, and you have photographs taken where they're holding the book and you're holding the book, you're holding them, they're holding you. It's very exciting. And of course, you can't do something abstract or something crazy out there, whatever, because, well, I suppose you could do. It depends on the book you're working with. But it's they can't be left there looking at it going, "Yeah, right. What?
And who are you? just who are you? What's happening here?"
Security, please, security. And so it's got to resonate. It's got to work with the text, obviously, and that sort of thing. So you can't say, "What do you mean you don't understand it? I'm an artist." It's got to resonate. It's got to resonate, basically. And I've just started a new teaching program, so I've been traveling backwards and forwards. So the time I was taking traveling backwards and forwards, that was my thought time. This all sounds very grand. You're on train, and you imagine, sort of plush furniture, and it's beautiful. But this is the UK. And I've been traveling with Southwestern trains or whatever it is, and I'm sure they're really good. But whenever I travel, you're sort of like this with people. You're 16 people to a table, and you're trying to write notes down, design ideas, and there's somebody spilling coffee over you, and you know what it's like. It's the UK,
and it also costs like a plane ticket because it's United Kingdom.
Funnily enough, you're right there. Yes, I actually worked out that I could have flown to Paris and back for about the same money.
Yeah. Or Ibiza.
Yeah. Well, I prefer Paris, but I'm sure it's a place with beautiful people. Fantastic. But so there we go. But of course, there are other rail companies places I want to go to. So that's it. So all in all, you've got to really think. You're thinking on your feet. And you've got to read the book, 3, 4, in my case, 5 times. I think I read it. So I get an idea, get a flow, get a feel for it. Then you've got to do a little bit of research, especially if place names are being used, and are they real, are they fictional, or is there something from that area that I can pull in? Is it something that I can use and grasp and mean? And then you've got to make the book, and it comes in folded sheets. Well, it comes in paper and it's been specially printed. There's just one copy, and you cannot make any mistakes whatsoever because it just takes too long to reprint.
Pasha,
And
you could probably show some of the photos of the unboxing of the sheets. Seems like an appropriate moment for that.
Because it's literally
Give me a second, yeah.
That's a nice shirt you're wearing. I like those colours.
And I'll use this moment for some housekeeping.
No.
So literally, on the day after the shortlist comes out, you're literally given this parcel arrives FedEx, though there are other companies available, of course, and that's when the clock really starts ticking. And my backbeat for this was, the opening sort of soundtrack of horses' hooves in Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai. I was like, that started with me. That's my backbeat happening. And so obviously there's great excitement. You're taking the wrapping paper off the parcel, and you're sort of looking for and it's almost like Christmas because there's all these layers of stuff happening, you see, and then it all comes up, and open it again, you open it again, and hey presto, you've got some paper in a box. Well, hey. But those are the sheets, and then literally it's folding, it's so everything starts then.
And what's the book?
My book for this year, I'll get, is Stoneyard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. Really quite a this year it was a little bit difficult for me. It took me 2 or 3 readings to get into it, and it's about elements of life, death, sort of memories, revisiting places, finding out about oneself, and lots of dead mice, a lot of dead mice. Oh yeah, droughts, buried nuns.
Okay.
It's all very interesting stuff.
Fun
Lots
stuff.
of things to take inspiration from.
Nuns,
dead rats. I can see them both in one design.
Yeah, exactly. So and it's sort of thing, Robert. How can I pull all of it together into something which A, I'm going to enjoy making, and B, that is actually going to, as I mentioned earlier, resonate with. So there's a lot of practicing going on, and the it's all set in Australia, so you've got Australian colours, the earth pigments and all this, and there's references to the First Nation. There's all sorts of things happening. I don't know if First Nation is the correct term, but the original population and their sacred grounds and things. And it's very easy to go down a sort of a route of, sort of, right, okay, I'll do some Aboriginal painting, so that's loads of dots. And that was my starting point. And I very quickly thought, whoa, hang on a second. There's got to be more than this. Let's not just go to default mode. It's not Crocodile Dundee.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, you and Rachel Kushner both made clearly Aboriginal art-inspired bindings, but for different books. Even the palettes are somewhat similar. Is it because the material is similar? I didn't have time to look what.
I don't know. It's strange that, because we work in complete. I mean, I don't know what any of the other binders are doing. The 6 binders in total, of course, for the 6 shortlisted finalists, as it were. And we don't know what anybody else is doing. And this is what sometimes it could be default mode, where it could be that I know that in my book there was references to earth colors and to various aspects of clothing, fabric, all sorts of things. And that obviously, stuck with me in a subliminal way, probably. And so one goes through it and you start mixing dye stuffs and seeing what happens. And as I've mentioned, I did start off with, working with dyes and dots. But then I thought, no, there's more to this. That can be a layer, but it's not necessarily the finished design. And I also worked on I was very fortunate. A year or so ago, I was invited to Australia for, I think it was Bind 23, something like that, Bind 22 maybe. The Australian Guild of Bookbinders, New Zealand Bookbinders as well. And I had an opportunity to actually, see the colours, and as one does, I was a tourist, sort of thing, taking lots of photographs. So I was able to draw from my personal experience of being there as well. So, some things do stick with you, and I suppose we, as a designer, as an artist, if somebody's saying it was a russet brown, then if another artist takes inspiration from that, or creative takes inspiration from that, then yes, they could be using a similar palette, but in a different way. And so it wouldn't, if two of the novels were set in Australia, then it wouldn't surprise me that there was perhaps a similar palette being used or thought about at one time or another. So I understand where you're coming from.
I'll interrupt for a moment for some housekeeping because I didn't voice out our standard how you call it, call to action to our viewers to to share their ideas and comments and ask questions, and maybe to tell us from where they are joining us, because it's always interesting and fun to see. Last time we had a pretty international company over there on YouTube, and group of people over there on YouTube and Facebook. But anyway, that's the usual stuff. And please also check the description of this video. There are links to Mark's social accounts where you can find a lot of interesting stuff there, and some other useful links, including link to our Patreon, where our viewers and followers can support us with their money, which is crucial for any project like ours. And also I wanted to say that we have arranged talks with 4 other bookbinders who made booker bindings for this year. So we agreed to have a talk with Kate Holland, Glenn Malkin, Nikki Oliver, and Richard Bitsmore. We don't have exact dates yet. Some of these talks will happen in January. Some of these talks will probably happen in February. We're aligning our schedules, because not everyone is able to do a talk on Saturday or something like that, and we'll have to discuss it with Pavel as well, because he has a busy schedule. But these talks should happen, and so stay tuned. Obviously, it's now holiday season, so there probably wouldn't be any more live streams this year after today, but there should be a lot of interesting stuff starting with January. Anyway, as I said, if you have any questions or comments, please post them. We have Roger Forster on Facebook. Good afternoon. I'm from Gosport in Hampshire. Richard Minsky, as I mentioned before, East Hampton, New York. Hanfleet, hello and greetings from Lancaster, UK. A lot of our regular viewers today. Daniel Shekeli hello from Romania. Nice to have some compatriots here. And Hanfleet asked to Mark, you should have used kangaroo leather, question mark. Okay.
And I immediately found a couple of examples online, but only a couple.
Yeah, I mean, it did cross my, I'll be honest, it did cross my mind to use kangaroo skin. And I kept thinking about it. And it was one of those things I thought, okay, I've used kangaroo skin before. but I'm on a very tight line here. I use a material that I'm very familiar with, which in this case was goat skin. And of course, other animals do grow in and are part of Australia. But I thought, work with something that you're going to be able to create the foundation, i.e. the binding from. Perhaps if I had more time, then yes, I would be exploring other covering materials that would be sort of indigenous to Australia. But it's also, just making sure everything works, because you've got to have the book finished. It's got to be done. There's no fudging it. Oh, can I deliver it whenever? Because it's actually, though the date itself was the 12th of November, that's for the award ceremony, the evening, the bash, the gig, whatever. The books had to be finished a week before then, because obviously the Booker Prize people have to do their stuff with it. They've got to photograph it. They've got to do their social media and everything else. So the timeline, that's constantly ticking. And it's not like an exhibition where I've known, I'm sure other people have done this, you get the work in 5 minutes before the exhibition opens. One can't do that. And as I say, because there was only one copy of that's it, you can't cock up, you can't make a mistake, you can't not have it work. You've just got to have it done.
So how did you get from those first dots to this?
Yeah, well, now you've asked a question. And that's a very good question. How did I get from there? Well, it was, again, rereading the book and really sussing out and thinking, how can I link things together where I want to get over what I want to do. And one of the key, for me anyway, one of the key passages in the book is when the main character is at school as a school child. There's a class, and it's an all-girls school, and there's a class, it's a sewing class. Anyway, a fight kicks off between the girls, and I thought sewing, and that was quite pivotal actually for me. That just that one element, that one chapter, if you like, in the book, where I thought, okay, that can link everything together. Now, my father was a master tailor, master cutter, and I could quite seriously sew before I could ride a bicycle. And I used to use, my father used to do the treadle on an old Singer sewing machine, and I used to feed fabric through and all sorts of things. And actually, one of my first disciplines when I was at art college was fashion and design. So I was making clothes, designing clothes, and that sort of thing. And so I literally had to go back to square one and think, right, how I really want to sew badly. I want to sew like a disinterested schoolgirl who really doesn't want to do sewing but has to do it. So, and it's a nice way of introducing color, texture, line, and form. And it's also a way of creating stylized shape and form as well. Now, the colors, very earth colors, so the leather was all hand dyed and then sewn, pieced together, back paired onlays. It's not just a question of sticking stuff together and then, going rampant with the sewing machine, getting the tensions purposefully wrong, missing stitches, thread breaking, all these other things. And then when the sewing had been done to get it onto the book itself, the boards, getting it adhered on, and then reworking the leather. And so what I was doing was trying to get the essence of earth, of scratch marks, lines, and everything, because there's a lot of mice eating things, and there's a lot of burials in it. I don't want to give a spoiler or anything like that. It is a good read. But yeah, there are bones involved, human bones, human remains, lots of pits being dug. And so I wanted to get that sort of visceral nature over as well. And one way of doing it was literally by being very careful. And after the hand dyeing, getting the leather on the book, is literally using sandpaper to remove part of the surface of the leather, and with it, the surface dye. And then you end up with these very, I think, quite beautiful, sensitive sort of areas where the dye is penetrated into the leather more, so you get this sort of movement happening as well. Earth, stones, rocks, all these other things. That's that, and that's me sewing on a sewing machine, but very badly. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was also wanting to combine different materials, obviously with the sewing class, and they're obviously working with fabrics and things. I wanted to use fabric with the sewing. So one way was to create incised panels, again textured with a little bit of leather dust, dyed down again in quite a painterly, could one say, naive way. And again, these quite stark geometric-ish forms with
it has a patchwork feel to it. So many materials, like everything you could find lying around you, that kind of feel, and yet very ordered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to do was I wanted it to be not jumbled, but eclectic, where there are different things happening with it. It's not just leather inlays, a little bit of dye. I wanted to do something a little bit more expressive. And one way of being expressive, of course, as well as using color, is to use line. And I used, sewing as a form of mark making, of creating lines, to create, recognizable shapes and forms that, again, link in with the text block. And again, also obviously tie in with the end papers, the doublure, the box, everything, the book total, as it were, to create a real sort of an electric theme to it as well. So it really pops, it really zings out. Because obviously you've got light, the light and color. I thoroughly enjoyed doing it, actually. It was great fun.
And why
I
those
think
particular colors for the threads, the blues and the pinks? Is it boys and girls, or is it just me reinterpreting it?
It's basically it's colors that were mentioned in the text, of various people's different color dresses and clothes and things like that. So again, it's just these little tie-ins, and it was also what I felt worked. I just thought, okay, which colors pop? Which one bounces off each other? Let's go for something that's just bold, bright, sort of fun, as well as being sort of a visual sort of cascade, if you like. So when we're looking at the full binding, starting from the left, there's a mention to plastic flowers by a grave. So I thought, okay, how would a child on a sewing machine produce flowers? Well, I did it freehand. I just thought, right, let's go for it. Let's do this. And then again, working from left to right on the top, you've got an electricity pylon, which is again mentioned. There's power shortages, power cuts, and all sorts of things. Again, on the top row, the beak of a chicken. Then we've got a crucifix, and then on the lower the lower half, we've got reverse transfer of a spine, which again relates to the a body being buried. And then in the bottom right hand corner, a stylized image of a mouse or a mouse.
A dead mouse, clearly dead mouse. I can see those dead eyes.
It's very dead, trust me. It's very, very, very dead.
Still, yes. It's very cute.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted sorry, excuse me. So I really wanted to get these elements over, and again, earth colors and pigments, and a nod, if you like, to indigenous population, their colors and the way that they work with colors as well. But I wanted to keep those a little bit muted, and for the thread to create the line, to create forms. So we've got within those threads, we've got stylized crucifixes going across the board, insertions that sort of we think about holes. We've got skylines, all sorts of things happening. Again, they all relate to what's happening in the text. which is a good reason to buy the book and read it, I guess.
As for me, I'm also seeing something of Basquiat here. I don't know the blockiness of it all and pop artness.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. I wouldn't be averse to you saying that at all. No, I mean, again,
Okay.
yeah, it's very. Yeah, I just wanted to be quite graphic about it, to be, again, big in the face, bright, but with darker elements coming through, and because knee deep in dead mice isn't really a nice thing.
Yeah, and also the cross and the arrangement of the blocks make me think of iconostasis.
Yes, again, again. I mean, a lot of this is actually set in a retreat, and the main characters are nuns, and so yeah, there is quite a lot of iconography. There is all those things do resonate. Yes, all the way through. Yeah.
You mentioned
So cool.
that you had to sort of make yourself to start the book all over again several times to get in the flow. But this reminded me of some of our earlier discussions about Booker prize bindings made by you and by some other bookbinders. But also, did it ever happen to you that you had to make a binding for a book and it wasn't working, and in the end you decided, no, I wouldn't take this commission or whatever? Or how does it usually work for you? Did any of that sort of situation happen to you, and how did you resolve them in the end?
Yeah, quite. I think everybody. It doesn't matter what genre of making or arts crafts one works in. That there are going to be times where you think, okay, yeah, I can do this, and you get even halfway through, 7/8 of the way through, and you think this isn't working. It's not gelling. Something's wrong. And that's the time when you sort of put everything down and you walk away from it, and then you go back to it a little while later, and if you still can't rationale the situation, then it's always best to say, right, fine, that's it. However, what I do tend to do is I do tend to work on maquettes, smaller books, to try out different ways of working. So if there is going to be any complications or problems, they're found out and sorted out before I start work on the text block. So sometimes, yes, I've had to change, the making of what I, thought, okay, I'm going to go for this and I'll do it. And then, as I said, 7/8 way through thinking, no, this is just not going to work. And starting again completely from the beginning, because it's, it's wrong. Something's not resonating. It's not working. And I don't want to, as I'm sure the majority, if not all of makers, they don't want to put work out there which isn't really what they would want to put out, which isn't good enough for them. I want it to be right. And I want the eventual client or the owner or whatever to be happy with the work and know that I've given it 100%. And it's not just okay, a few onlays, bit of gold, bit of sprinkly, bit of bling, that's it. Because I really do treat each book individually, and I don't sort of regurgitate the same design in a different colorway, or just stick to one way of working. So one way of working doesn't fit every book.
And did you decide in advance that there will be this contrast between what we see from outside and what we see when we open it?
Very much so, yes, very, very much so. Again, it's this threads and cloths and the threads that weave through our lives that connect one thing to the other. There are actual references to on the back end paper. It says I've got a drawer in the studio which I keep threads and things in, and I've got this little packet that says extra buttons, and it just so happened I took a photo. These are all my photographs, and they're then printed onto flottage paper, again, keeping the same colorways, yellows, pinks, and that sort of thing. So it's my imagery. I've worked it. I've done it. But there is one passage in the book where basically a young boy, that's it, Extra Buttons, where he asks his mother to sew a button on his shirt. She refuses. So he goes out and gets a rifle from somewhere and shoots both his parents. It's a cracking read. It's a cracking read. So hence, sort of like, bloodstains and that sort of thing, and that little nod to Extra Buttons. And I just thought it'd be quite, sort of nice. And again, the textural nature of the imagery of the photographs, working with the textures, the sewing that's on the outside of the book. So there are links, but it's not, sort of like just repeat what's on the outside, inside, outside. It's again, it's creating a visual sequential narrative to what's physically happening with the book, the text, and that sort of thing.
My life would have followed a absolutely different path if I followed the same approach with the having buttons needed to be sewn to my shirts or trousers or whatever.
This is why I'm very happy for because he taught me to sew my own buttons on. So yeah.
Exactly. I wanted to circle back a little bit more once again to something we discussed previously. You mentioned that one of the goals is making customers, clients happy, and I think we also had an interesting discussion about that with Rita Udina in the concerning book restoration and book conservation. That sometimes your clients request things of you that are probably not ethical. Or at least not good. So
should we say questionable?
Yeah, questionable. That's a good word. That's a good word.
Debatable.
I think. Yeah,
did you have any experience like that? Yeah. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Yes, in a word, and I've always said no to those jobs, and saying no, you're talking with the wrong person. I don't do that sort of thing. There was one where somebody had a modern first edition, and if I remember correctly, the first two pages had been clipped on the corner for some reason, cut. Mm-hmm. I think it was a selling. I don't know why, but they'd been cut, and he'd got a second edition, same quality paper, etc., etc. And he said, "Could you just change these 2 pages round?" And I went, "Why?" And then he said, "Well, no, you're talking with the wrong person. I don't do that." And he also asked me if I could make it as invisible as possible.
Oh,
well, we know what that means, don't we?
Yeah.
Complete, best condition, first edition, etc., etc. So I just said no. I don't do that, and that's happened. And a couple of things like that have happened in the past. Passports are always a good one. I usually get asked, some not usually, but maybe 2 or 3 times a year to repair a passport.
Okay, interesting.
I just go, no way, not a chance. And then I inform the authorities that I've got an email from somebody saying, "Do I repair passports?" So
that could be an interesting art project.
Yeah, but yes,
with some ramifications.
I suppose I could use my old passport.
Like the way you do with the books, you from what I remember, you only bury books that you made. So you could also first make a passport and then bury it.
And suddenly special services services of many countries got very interested in this live stream.
I could really try that, yeah. But again, it's also thinking about the totality as well. The box as well has got to go with it. So again, it's just a 2-tray drop back box, with a stylized crucifix. But again, the lining of the box just pops out as well. And again, I wanted to just create those links and things happening. You know, I think that with the various ways of working with materials that we have available at the moment, and of course in the future, there is so much potential to, if you want, move away from what we were doing last century, you know, things being leather, etc., gold tooling, etc., to actually using, you know, contemporary reproduction techniques like photography, which we can get pretty good even with a relatively modest setup, and to do stuff which pops out. So instead of, you know, the box being lined with felt or velvet or whatever it is, it can actually work with the book. It can continue the book. The box is, you know, the opening curtain to the play, to the novel, to the book itself. So why not integrate it? And instead of it just being, you know, all leather, bit of gold on the spine, you can do something which is a bit, you know, more poppy with it. Why not?
I wanted to comment that it sort of goes really well with the last week's class we had with Tom McEwen when he used transfer of laser printed not ink but powder on the edge of the book. But then I was like, well, it's not already not any a modern technology anymore. It's a last century technology.
Yeah. But again, the reverse transfer technique, I think, yeah, a majority of creative bookbinders have used it in one way or another. And it is a great way of working because you can do stuff with that you just can't do any other way. And I think if you extend, especially if you're working within the creative, if you're extending your palette, and basically, as with Tom's work, you know, though the edge of the book is made up of single sheets, when they're put together, it's a solid surface. Use it as a surface. Make it part of the joy, the experience of the book. The book is three-dimensional, 360 degrees. It works in all planes. So why not do that? Why not explore that medium, that surface, that area, and really go for it? Not all edges are gold, with a bit of gophering on it, and not another 4-edge painting, please. But there's anything wrong with those techniques, and in the right hands they can be wonderful things. But it's about, you know, being a little bit more contemporary in what we do and where we go with the work. And one way of doing it is to be more visual. You know, not all designs have to be done with palettes and gouges and straight lines and gold and that sort of thing.
And in technical terms, do you print on handmade paper? Do you go to a specialist printer, or can you do it yourself at home? Because I hear home printers for like under 400 euro can be very, very good, like typographic quality of print.
Yeah, I'm quite lucky. I've got well, not lucky. I mean, I've worked hard and saved up and bought it. But I've got a laser printer, Creacola, something like that, and it begins with K, and it's really, really good. I've got a very modest setup. I think mine was under £500. But the results you get with it are a far cry from even what we were using 5 years ago. You know, and I tend to use very good quality, either mold made or machine made papers. Handmade papers, because of the very nature of handmade papers, there can be slight fluctuations, slight variations in paper thickness and all these tiny little details, which sometimes don't work with this is from my personal experience with the printer I have. So, for example, I've got a small stock of Zirkle paper left, which I use, and that works beautifully. You know, if you're using a heavier paper, just change the settings in your printer to take on heavier weight papers, etc., etc. So there's an awful lot that one can do with a very modest setup. And in fact, I've been recently working with combining traditional typeset with contemporary imagery, laying one on top of the other. And some of the results have been fantastic. You know, I mean, really cool. The thing is that you're sort of fighting maybe a traditional element within certain groups of people that say, oh no, all printing's got to be done in, it's got to be in a press and it's all this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, okay, right, fine. But, that's, forgive me, that's so last century. I live now and for the future. And, if I can produce what I want to produce and it doesn't involve me using, a star press and etching and all that sort of stuff, then I'm going to use it. Why not? Yeah, I mean, it seems logical for me. I'm sure that if, the guys who were working 100 years ago had access to the kit that we've got, even a modest setup, they would be using it. They wouldn't be just relying on wood block prints and all that sort of stuff. They'd be going for it. They'd be going, wow, you can do this. You go, yeah, I can do that. And they go, I want some of that action. Why not?
And also, there are like 9 billion people on our planet now, and it seems we're finally living in the age where there is enough viewers, enough consumers, enough people who can cherish your work for any style and approach. And people who continue this sort of infighting, it always or gatekeeping, this always surprises me, because like there is enough for everyone. Why would you fight?
The thing is that, yes, of course, I do appreciate the artistry, the skill, etc., that goes into, shall we say, traditional aspects of making, of course, and that's extraordinarily important. It really is. And I use typeset printing. I do lino cut, woodblock printing. I do all of these things in my own work, but I also engage with what is available now. And if I can combine, then I will be doing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, if you go back far enough within the history of the book, printing, manuscript, handwriting and everything else, they were always combining, they were always bringing things together. And this is also, people will hold this up and saying, this is what a book should be like, and thinking, yeah, they've used 2 different print techniques there. And there's also the capitals or the majesticals were hand done. So they were actually combining lots happening here. Don't hold one thing up and say this is what it should be, and then deny access to basically the same thing in a slightly different way. And also it stifles creativity. It stifles, the way that one can work. And I suppose also limits the market or the potential for other people to be able to understand and engage with what you're doing. And I think that's very important. I mean, sometimes with people, they work in this little vacuum. But as you said, the world is a far bigger place, and there is more than enough for everybody and everything.
I remember reading late medieval, early modern sort of Tudor time comments about how you should not use marbled papers. You should only use high quality textiles. Like it looks. Why would you be so passé? Like how it's no. A book should have that, and that, and I think that kind of discourse will never end.
Oh yeah, I mean it will do. Yeah, I mean because I think one of the things is perhaps if somebody's been working for a long time in with a particular way of working, they need to be able to justify the way they're working and how they work. And one way to justify what you do is by dissing what other people do. And I suppose if you shout loud enough and long enough, then enough people will listen to you and say, oh, right, okay, so that's what it's about. Okay, I agree with you because that's all I've been hearing. That's okay. But, there are many other ways of working. And of course, this is just one way of making a book, the codex form. There are many other ways of being able to transport or work with, mark making, printing, writing, illustration, photography, etc., within, the huge umbrella that is the book. such a small word book, but it's a huge umbrella. And again, we can go down the route of historical, cultural, regional variations, etc., etc., etc. But at the end of the day, it's a book. Go for it. Do it. It's what I do. I mean, you're talking to the wrong person if somebody's going to come it down, because I bury books. I mean, come on.
Hopefully, we discuss that as well today, a bit later, if you're willing to do that. I wanted to remind our viewers that if you have any questions, please post them. As you can probably see, we're getting to the end of this part of our talk, at least closer and closer to the end. But yeah, if you still have any questions, please post them and we will pass them to Mark, and we'll see if we have time for anything else.
That was an image of me looking rather splendid, I thought. Look at that.
Were there any images on the from the ceremony on the Designer Bookbinders?
There were no images. No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing to see there. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. And for those people who have actually got members of Designer Bookbinders and have received the recent newsletter, a lot of those images in there are obviously, especially the dancing bit after the event, have obviously been photoshopped. And it's not me. I would never. No. That's no.
You enjoyed it.
And it's not any of the other binders as well, to be honest. It's all photoshopped.
Good.
All of
Good
it.
To know.
Many. Nothing to see there.
We'll make sure to discuss it with our other guests in January and February.
I've got enough information on them. They will say nothing.
Anyway, how did the presentation to the author go?
It went okay, actually. I mean, obviously, you've got 6 very, very nervous authors. And for a lot of them, I think all of them perhaps, it was their first time there. So they're very nervous, and they were, very pleased with what we'd done. Nowadays, they can follow us on social media and stuff, because with Designer Bookbinders, they post up, work in progress and things.
Yeah.
That was great, and it was actually, really nice. And Charlotte was a really, really nice person. We were all herded into the main arena for our meal, which was very nice. And again, it's, the cameras are on, and it's red carpet arrivals, canapes, welcome speeches, and then the dinner, which was great. I had 3 puddings, actually. There was a chocolate mousse thing, very nice. But of course, everybody's really, really nervous. And it's at that point, of course, that the bookbinders can relax. We've done our job. That's it. We've done it. We can sit back and relax. So we're there going, oh yeah, it's cool. Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, thank you very much indeed, etc., etc. And of course, everybody else on the table, they're all sitting there going, like scared mice, almost like that. And it's building up, and it's building up, and it's building up, and you all of a sudden the winner is the wrong word. The person who's the recipient of the award is names called out, and one table erupts in this fanfare of noise, shrieks, whistles, and hoorays. And then there's 5 other tables which are politely clapping. It's very sanguine, very quiet, but the tension's been released from the table. You can actually, it's rather like a hovercraft sitting down on its skirts after all that fan action's been happening. They physically sit with, okay, not this time, another time perhaps. And so that's great. And then, it's all clapping and all this stuff, and then apparently some people went dancing.
We've
but
got to.
Or so you heard.
so yeah, I don't believe a word of it myself. But the evening itself is really quite cool. Everything's sort of sorted out. It's very it's loose, it's casual. Before it used to be all black tie and stiff dresses, and everybody, of course, was very quite, sort of reserved and stiff. This, since they've introduced, sort of casual, smart, casual cocktail dress, it's relaxed and it's a lot more, how can I put it? Natural, I guess. Plus, the nice thing is I wouldn't be there for half an hour before the event trying to tie my bow tie and coming up with something that looks like, somebody's just squirted some black ink up my throat, just like that, But yeah, the evening is it's great, and the cameras are there, it's live, it's radio, and the Booker people have their own YouTube channel, which is always worth a visit, I guess. You may see me, of course, and it's great. It really is good, and I feel very fortunate to be part of it. It's a very small part of it, as of course do the other binders. We're often asked if there's any competition between the bookbinders. Well, there isn't, because it's not our work that's going to be receive the award. It's for the authors. To be on the long list when that comes out, that's a real that's really great for any author. To be on the short list, that's praise enough. But to be the person that receives the award, I mean, that's just a little bit of icing on the cake. I suppose with the bookbinders, the only competition we have is within ourselves to produce the best we can. What's best for the book. That we put all of our effort and accumulated skill and knowledge into just channeling it into this very tight time frame, this almost funnel thing happening with this backbeat. For me, the Seven Samurai opening scene going on and on and on, getting louder and louder and louder, and not letting anybody down, not letting ourselves down, not letting Designer Bookbinders down, and not letting the Booker Prize down as well. I'd say there's a lot of pressure involved, but to be part of it is really something that's very, very special, very special.
I wanted to ask, have you ever seen those books after delivering them to the authors, or is it always the last time you ever see this creation of yours?
Well, it just so happens that the books have been on display in Waterstones, Piccadilly, I think 192 Piccadilly, the old Simpsons building. That finishes at the end of December, so there's about a week to go, I guess. And so the Booker bindings, this year's Booker bindings, will be there, along with a whole section of the bookshop has been taken over by all the previous years. I think it started in 1966. Previous years Booker winners, as it were. So it's fantastic. It is absolutely. It's great to see, all these books in one place. I mean, if you wanted to start a library of Bookers, you just go there and just like that one, that one, that one, that one. It's absolutely superb. And in the center, basically, there's this sort of pedestal with a perspex canopy with all the Booker bindings, this year's Booker bindings in there. But one of the most amusing things for me was a few years ago, I did The Sea by John Banville. And I didn't see the book after he'd taken it. But we were asked to do a sort of a radio show for, I think it was RTE. And so the Booker bindings were on view at the Victoria and Albert Museum. So I trudged along to the Victoria and Albert Museum. And there was this reporter there, and she was very nice. And she said, I described all the bindings, and that was lovely. And then we came back to Studio 5. And then there was this bit of me rummaging through drawers and her shrieking at a fox, and it was dead, of course. Well, and different, talking about the way things had worked. And then it went to John Banville, so it was all recorded and everything else. And I didn't hear what he said. Anyway, I picked up a recording. I think it was one of these recorded program available for everybody, and I was listening to it, and he was going, "Oh, it's fantastic," and I thought, as it went on, he was talking more about the box that I put the book in than the actual binding itself. He said, "Oh, the box is fantastic." I was thinking, talk about the book, man. And he's going, "Oh, the box that opens, it closes." And he said, "Oh, it's fantastic." I'm thinking you're taking the book that was actually bound out and putting one of my own things.
Such an engineering marvel. It opens and closes.
You've got no idea of the strain I was under and everything else. But that's it, amusing things like that happen. You with people that are, I'm not going to say regular Booker finalists, but there are a few who have in the past, be 3, 4, 5 times or whatever. Peter Carey, for example, who has a number of Booker bindings, and I was talking with him. So I did one for him. I think Peter and Olivia Go to America, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, I have them on my bookcase. Yeah, they look really nice." Well, that's great. That's what you want, isn't it?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
At least they're not keeping the toilet door closed. That's the way I. Like some people in their Oscars.
Yeah. We had a one-word comment from Richard Minsky. Dapper! Exclamation point.
Dapper.
That
Dapper,
was
yeah.
At the moment when I think the whole book was displayed on the screen or something like that.
So it wasn't about my sartorial elegance and my dress, my tie.
About your
beautiful
dancing.
Yeah. No, I didn't dance.
About your not dancing.
I'm going to underline this. There are no images of me or anybody else.
Okay. So once again, if anyone still has any questions, please post them. And
I will try and answer.
Maybe even in the future, if you are watching this recorded video, you can still post questions. We can still pass them on to Mark, and maybe he will even answer them.
Did you know about this? No, I got no. Yes, of course I'll do that.
So, Pasha, do you have any more questions? Richard just wrote sartorial elegance. Richard just wrote. It's really nice to have Richard among the viewers.
Well, the thing was that when the invitation comes in, I mean it's all very plush, it's gold and it's black and it's all very, very sexy and everything. And it says, the invitation is Tuesday, the 12th of November, Old Billingsgate, 1 Old Billingsgate Walk, London. And there's a dress code, cocktail. And I read that and I thought, cocktail, what does that mean? So I looked it up online as you do, and apparently it means casual, smart, casual. Which, in other words, means lounge suit. Now, the suits I've got are quite seriously so last century, okay, and more than 25 years old. I can still get into them. And I thought, I've got to buy some new clothes. So actually, what I'm wearing is the trousers I bought from a charity. I do a lot of shopping at charity shops, as you should. And so the trousers were, sort of a local charity shop. The jacket I'm wearing, I borrowed from a mate. He said I can keep it now. Something to do with sweat. I don't know where that means or something. I don't, but I can keep it. So it's something new, something blue, something borrowed. It was rather like going to a wedding, I guess. But it was a very it was interesting, and you just, why not? It's a party, it's fun, live it. Yeah. There was no dancing.
So, are you ready to show us some of the Buried bindings, or that's not for today?
Yeah. Well, as regular viewers may know, part of my oeuvre is to bury books, the books that I've made. And recently, I thought I'd try doing a full leather one because, well, why not? And it just so happens I have it here. That you see.
Just so happens.
It's just, you see, that's slick. That's very slick. That is. And basically, it's a full leather binding. It's beautiful. Water shrunk. The paper's become dis-thinged and everything's all over the place. It smells. It smells. And it is absolutely. Again, I'm always wonderfully horrified, pleasantly surprised of what physically happens with the book. And so we've got a little bit of some flottage paper here. So that's what happens. And this was an experiment with a particular binding style, which is secondary sewn text block. So I'm actually trying out different ways of sewing construction and all sorts of things, different materials. And so you can see, if I just hold it up, you begin to see, the textures happening with the various wee beasties that go in there. And again, this is going to be forming a part of a major installation work, which will be put on exhibition next year.
Ooh. Which is soon.
Yes, but the year is quite long. It's 365 days. So next year might be soon, but there's still a long way to go. So I've just got to find a gallery that's willing enough to put this and other stuff in there. But again, it's looking at the textures, it's looking at everything else, and again, looking at suitability of materials and things. So it's not just burying books and seeing what happens. It's actually really looking at what does happen.
Have you thought about how you're gonna exhibit it? Because last time you made a special glass box, or was it a plexiglass
box with stand, and that was for one of the Kintsugi buried books. And this is going to be a walk round, uncovered, three-dimensional sort of sculptural event. So it's going to be, it's going to be. I say it's just going to be a pile of these, but they're going to be. It's going to be forming part of what I'm terming a lost or destroyed library. And I think following recent events, both in the natural world with flooding and everything, and other disasters that are man-made, human-made disasters that are unraveling in the world, where we do have the destruction of precious elements and things, including books, that it may form quite a poignant exhibition. And again, this will be forming part of a sort of a solo exhibition that I'm going to be putting together of more book arts, not necessarily fine bookbinding, design bookbinding, but more book arts and related aspects to other elements of my work that I do.
So will the visitors be allowed to touch them, or?
Good Lord, no. It's a book. No. if they buy it, look at the muck in here. If they buy it, they can touch it as much as they want. But no, it's always tempting to say, yeah, please feel and everything else. But if you've got, I'm not envisaging that I'm going to have people queuing around the block to see my work. I'll be lucky if I get two people, one of those being somebody lost coming in out of the rain. Is that it needs to be kept as it is, basically. But yeah, it'll be visually accessible in 360 degrees, and you can get as close as you want to it as long as you don't touch.
I remember this time Pavel and I visited Gutenberg Bible exhibition in Moscow, and there was an open on the table a facsimile of Gutenberg Bible, and I was like, I can browse through it, and I literally ran to it and started carefully browsing through the pages, and then like 3 security guys from all sides of the exhibition space run towards me, and they're like, "What are you doing?"
What do you?
Like, there are no signs that it's not allowed, that I'm not allowed to do that.
Right, yes, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things. I mean, the book is such a natural thing to pick up, read, engage with. It really, really is. And I think this is one of the problems of exhibiting books, is that it's not just the content, it's not just the cover, it's not just the paper, it's not just the printing, it's not just the illustration or whatever. It's all of these things combined, and it's a phenomenally difficult thing to exhibit. And again, that's something that I've been looking into in different ways of exhibiting artists, well, some of my book works, shall we say. So again, that's elements that I'm going to be exploring next year.
Mark, I wanted to show you one image. Have you seen this?
It's nice, isn't it?
These are fragments of Fedon Moore Psalter. You must have heard that story. A 9th century Psalter found in an Irish bog.
Yes,
And those are individual letters on vellum that survived,
yes,
despite everything around it disintegrating. And I especially like the various sizes of it.
yeah,
Here's a big initial. Here are small letters.
yeah.
I think this is amazing. When I found this image, I immediately thought about your work. Perhaps you should up the acidity.
And
Yeah,
now
I'll do that.
we're
Just
moving to Breaking Bad level visuals.
yeah. So yeah, I'll just send it to my local chemist. So if you've got anything quite acidic, please. Yeah, no, this is one thing. It is. I mean, I've noticed. For example, again with the recent series of books that I buried 4 together. This isn't the original cord. The original cord was buried with them, and that went. But because of the soil type that I was using, and I don't know what it did or whether the inks or whatever run, but all of a sudden, or the pages in one book started to go bright blue. That was quite incredible. Again, so you know, this thing that happens with the books when they're taken out of environment is actually really quite fascinating. And again, you know, like the Psalter, it really does create such a visual feast of what is and what's left. I mean, it's with stuff like that, you're looking at sort of, you know, literally what was important. Well, the words, the letters were important, and that's all that's left. The only thing is, of course, with that is, how does one reinterpret that? What was being said? How was it being said? We've got those collection of individual letters. Okay, a couple of letters together, perhaps, that sort of thing. But how does one put that together? How does one reinterpret it? It's absolutely stunning. I love that sort of thing, because the mind just explodes with ideas. And I suppose in a way, younger viewers won't know about this, but there was a thing at one time called a letter set, which was basically sheets of letters that you would rub on the back onto a piece of paper with a biro, and the letter would be magically transferred from this acetate sheet to the surface you were putting it on, paper, for example. And if the letter set got old, it would start breaking up, and you'd end up with these bits of letter shapes and forms and all sorts of things. And in one way, that sort of seeing, you know, the image you just shared, that's kicked off this thought about letter set and partial letter shape and form and that sort of thing. So it's amazing how things can be reinterpreted and move on. You know, seeing one thing can develop into something else and something else and something else and something else. So it really is quite cool. Yeah, bring it on. I think the more we have like that, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, that reminds me.
Yeah, sorry.
So it reminds me of 2 English comedians called Morecambe and Wise. And there's one very, very, very famous sketch they did. And they got a very important conductor in to do something. And Eric Morecambe was at the piano, and it was his turn. The conductor went sort of like this, and then to you, Eric. And Eric started playing the piano very, very badly. The conductor, a bit miffed, walked over and said, "You're playing all the wrong." And then Eric Morgan said, I'm playing all the right notes, just not necessarily in the right order. And it is one of these things where you've got those letter forms and everything else. You could create whatever you wanted from those. I mean, the original scribe or the original person that did that, what did they do? Why did they do it? How can we reinterpret it? It's absolutely super. Yeah, well, that's my afternoon sorted out.
So I wanted to read a couple of comments. We have Kizuna Meraki. Hello from Germany. Nice to have you here. Thanks for watching. And we have a question from Richard Minsky. Love the buried book. What do you do after unburying it to kill everything alive?
Very good question. Oh, we want an answer, right? Well, basically, what I do is I freeze the book, and I freeze it for about 48 hours, and I take it down as low as I possibly can. I've got a mate who works. I'm not going to say where this particular deep freeze is. I've got a mate who works in the kitchen, and he allows me to put things in his deep freeze. That's all I can say on that. I then so that kills off the majority of stuff, and then I just do localize. I then gently start opening the book up as far as I can, as it's sort of thawing, and work on it and try and tease everything out. But I don't actually, at the moment, I don't fumigate anything, because I still want the process of the decay to continue. I'm obviously very, very careful of spores and fungal infestation and that sort of thing, and I do eradicate that as much as I can. However, with some of the books, that actually creates nature's made marks with various unctions and the various bits and spores and everything, and that forms part of the process of the buried book series. What I am doing at the moment, I am in negotiation. It has to be in negotiation at times, or with somebody that does have a fume cabinet, with the idea of me saying, right, at this point, I'm going to put them in the fume cabinet and just get them zapped, mic'd, whatever it is. But again, I do like the idea of the continuation of the decay. I mean, nothing lasts forever. And I think it is to watch things that I buried 15, 20 years ago and see where they are now, the bits still keep falling off and everything else. I think it's part of that process. It's almost as if it'll end up with nothing there, which of course nothing will last.
This is fascinating. Only yesterday I was reading about the work of Jana Sterbak, who made dresses sewn out of meat 30 years before Lady Gaga, and she also made furniture upholstered in steaks.
Yeah.
And I read about it years ago, and I thought it was a one-time thing, and it all long since disappeared. But it's been preserved in museums. Those very pieces of meat slowly disintegrating to this day. This is fascinating.
It is. I mean, the thing is, you could that way of working. One can say it's a metaphor for using animal skins, and you're just using another part of the animal skin, etc., etc., etc. And it really does open up a number of different possibilities for creation, non-creation, our own sensibilities and things like that. But I think that we live in such, the majority perhaps of people live in an environment where as soon as things start going off, shall we say, they get rid of it. But that's only part of it. I mean, and again, it is watching this whole process through. I mean, there's a very classic example of the British Library going through a book that had been loaned out, and somebody had used a slice of bacon as a bookmark. Right? Does one remove that? Does one keep it in? It's part of the history of the book. It starts asking an awful lot of questions about what is. I mean, it's rather like Palazzi and his very special tin cans. Now, for those of us who know the artist will know exactly what I mean by his very special tin cans. In fact, I've got a book of his lying around somewhere. What he basically did, he canned some body waste, for want of a better word, and was selling them, and they were selling for more than the weight's worth in gold. And he was literally selling, well, you know, poo. That was nicely produced, 10 cans. I mean, it's done properly, you know.
Elizabeth Westland.
So, you know,
yeah, sorry.
The question is nowadays, do we open that tin can? You know, do we find out what's happening? I mean, you know, but that tin can isn't going to last forever. You know, there will be, you know, there may be a hazard situation happening sometime in a number of galleries and museums around the world. You know, and a vigilator going around also going, what's that smell? Explode. A lot has exploded. You know, there you go.
One museum in the Balkans recently had a leakage in their display of Boyce's bottles of olive oil. You know, they still have a couple of crates, so nothing tragic happened, but still.
Yeah, but this is it. I mean, this is part of the creative process and the journey of the creative process. It doesn't necessarily once it's left the studio or has gone to a collector or gallery or, you know, a lover of the arts, the crafts, or whatever. And for me, it's like making. I make blank notebooks and sketchbooks, which I sell. You know, it's part of what I do, and I also use them myself to put my own notes and everything in. Now, when somebody buys one of my notebooks, of course, they can do whatever they want with it. You know, they put their notes, their drawings, and all sorts of things in it. So again, there's that continuation of what is happening. And if we look at marginalia in printed or any other books and that sort of thing, again, there is this continuum, there is this process happening. And I think that all adds to it. It really, really does. Yeah, I think this is the beauty of working with the book under this umbrella of the book, is that, you know, they quite legitimately can be added to and taken away, legitimately, with it still being a book. You know, we can quite often, you know, I have a friend who apparently is a poet, and we'll be having a beer, and he's like, I've got an idea, and I'd say, right. So I get my notebook out and rip a page out, give him a biro, and he's there scribbling away, doing his odes, and that's it. But I've taken a page out. Have I destroyed my book? Well, yes, no, and but I've given that to him, and he's being creative with it. So again, this is element to it. So yeah, I just love this idea of stuff.
Is it still a part of your book?
Yes, you see, that's a very good question. I should be charging him, really, shouldn't I? Yes. Now you've sown that seed in my mind. Now I'm seeing him tonight. Actually, I'll broach carefully as I can.
That's a great opportunity. By the way,
see what is.
By the way, if you sell any of your buried books, do you supplement it with instruction on safe storage and stuff?
Well, I do go through. The buyer does acquire the work in full knowledge of the various processes that it's been through, and I do supply information on perhaps the most beneficial way of looking after the work, but ultimately it's for them to do with what they like. It's not for me to say you can't do this or you can't do that with it. It's theirs. They do whatever they want with it. Ultimately,
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, a classic example is a few years ago I produced for a charity a book work, and it went into this sort of blind auction along with 150 other works, you know, and it fetched a reasonable amount of money. And the person who bought it was a sort of had got a few other pieces of my work, and contacted me and said, do you mind me buying? I went, no, the money's gone to a charity. And there was this pause in the conversation. He said, yeah, on the way home, I popped into a bookshop and I went, oh, jolly good, jolly good. And he said, and I sold it to them. I went, great, lovely. And then he said, I sold it for twice as much as I bought for it. I went, no problem. It's yours. You do with it what you will. And he said, do you have it? Yeah, they've now got it for sale. And I said, I hope they're going to be making a profit from it. And he went, yeah, do you mind? I went, no, that just means my stock value has just risen. In a day, it's been tripled or whatever it is. I've got no problem with that. I said, were you happy? He went, yes. I said, is the bookshop happy? He went, yes. I said, the charity's happy. Everybody's happy. Don't worry about it. He left.
Do you keep track of the prices of your work?
When they come up for sale in auctions and things, yeah, I do. Not often. I'm not one of these avid people that sort of follow everything that I do, and you've got to have a license to do. If I've taught you, you've got to have a license to teach what I've taught you, and it costs you X amount of money and everything else. I don't do that, and I don't do that with my work either. It's if somebody buys it, they buy it. Simple as that.
I almost bought Mark's book earlier this year on an auction, but it went a bit higher than I was ready to pay for it. I'm sorry to say that.
That's okay. It's just one of those things,
Yeah.
But I do. I am a member of ACM or something, which is the ACF Artists Collecting Fund, and they keep an eye on things that come up for sale. And in the UK, like many parts of the world, if your work is resold for over a certain amount of money, then as a still living artist, you have a percentage of that. It's like a royalty almost. So there is that. They look after that for me. Obviously, nothing has had a resale yet that's been noteworthy for me to say, and I've got X amount. But yeah, there have been occasions where the work does come up, and it's always very, very interesting to see, who, what, and how much it goes for.
And would you say there is a particular popular period of your work or style, because you work in different styles?
Do you know, I haven't thought of that. Well, I suppose my earlier work, I mean, when I say early, I do mean, from very late 80s, early 90s. That's last century. That's beginning to come up. And a few other works have come up from people who have moved on, shall we say, and their collections are coming up. But I suppose it's from all periods, all times. I mean, I think one of the most recent works that did come up was about 7, 8 years old, something like that, which in making in a career is relatively newish. But with people that do have collections of work, not obviously just my work. I mean, there are many a lot of other gifted people around, and producing superb work and everything else. Those collections generally get bequeathed to organisations like the Bodleian, for example, V&A, British Library, for Shakespeare, etc., etc., etc. So a lot of that work won't come up for resale. But yeah, when it does, it's always interesting to see where it goes, who's got it, why not. Yeah.
I wanted to read another comment. Elizabeth Westland, another of our regular viewers, posted on Facebook. It feels like watching Criminal Minds or something like that. It was a comment that was posted a few minutes ago when we were still discussing, buried stuff and using meat and things like that. But that's when our talks, venture when we invite Mark Cockram. That's how it goes.
The thing is, this very book project, it does have serious side to it, and actually started off as a very serious thing. I was contacted, this is a number of years ago, and I was contacted by somebody to say, look, we're having this exhibition of about insects. Insects and books sort of go together. Of course they do. Insects love books because, books, the materials, and it's a smorgasbord for them, and the larval and everything else. And I was introduced to a forensic entomologist. Now, a forensic entomologist is somebody who studies insects and larval and the carapaces and everything else for forensics to determine when, if a body's been found, at what time of year, when, how many years ago it'd been, lost, found, discovered, whatever. So there was quite a serious side to it, because obviously when people are found, they're usually found with other accoutrements around them, their clothes, other personal effects like books, for example. So it was one way of working and seeing what would happen to books given an environment. And so there is that side of it. But then I thought, looking at the results, I thought this is actually a very creative process. It really, really is. And I just took it and started running with it, and have continued to run with it. So yes, it's amazing where one's journey takes one, and then the direction that one goes to, it can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. I say I don't just bury books. I do other stuff. I burn books as well. My new toy. This is. I bought myself a Christmas present. It's a blowtorch. This is great. It really is.
And we'll return to you in 2025 to discuss some
fire safety.
Yeah.
Fire safety in the studio. But yeah, it's great for doing toast with, and cheese on toast.
Good to know.
Bookbinder and the torch. What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing to see here.
So, anyway, it's almost 90 minutes, and I think it was a quite educational and entertaining talk. Thank you, Mark, for that, and thank you everyone for staying with us today and watching this video or watching it in the future. As usual, I invite everybody to check the links in the description, subscribe, to our channel and to Mark's Instagram as well, and maybe even share this link or link to this video with your friends and colleagues, because it's a nice talk for sure. We are going to have more online lessons like we did with Tom McEwen last Saturday. We are planning some more for the next year, and we'll see how it goes, because, well, we want to keep it interesting and not just, how to sew signatures or whatever, but a bit more. Yeah, that's exactly that should be a good lesson. But we'll see how it goes. We have a couple of people with whom we're talking about this stuff, and I hope we will be able to announce some new lessons early in 2025. And as I said, there will be talks dedicated to at least some of the other 5 booker bindings of 2024. We have other stuff prepared, but yeah, now it's time to have some vacation time, holiday time, and to relax a little bit. No, not yet.
No, not yet. No, good Lord, no. I'm flat out.
Yeah, I'm closing my workshop on the 17th of December, and we're driving to Berlin. So,
lovely place.
Finally, some relaxation time. So, Richard Minsky is clapping in the comments. Elizabeth Westlund wrote, "Thanks, you made my day." Hanflit, thank you all for your time, and thanks to Mark for such a lot of ideas to think about. Yeah, as usual, we'll stay for a bit longer while the live stream drops on both on YouTube and Facebook. But please, as I said, subscribe, stay tuned, and there will be many more interesting and educational talks in 2025.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.